Hey folks, my name is John White and I'm the pastor here at the First Presbyterian Church of Jackson, Tennessee, and this is your Lenten Devotional for the week. Today I want us to think about a subject called forgiveness. And forgiveness is so important in the world today because all of us have people in our lives who we need to forgive. And all of us also need to be forgiven by people in our lives. We live in a very imperfect world, a sinful world, and that's part of who we are. And therefore, there is always a need for forgiveness in our lives. And so, as we think about it this morning, I want to read to you a story from the second chapter of Mark's Gospel. Beginning with the first verse. When Jesus returned to Capernaum after some days, it was reported that he was at home. So many gathered around that there was no longer room for them, not even in front of the door, and Jesus was speaking the word to them. Then some people came, bringing to Jesus a paralyzed man carried by 4 of them. And when they could not bring him to Jesus because of the crowd, they removed the roof above him, and after having dug through it, they let down the mat on which the paralytic lay. When Jesus saw their faith, he said to the paralytic, "Son, my child, your sins are forgiven." Now some of the scribes were sitting there, questioning in their hearts, "Why does this fellow speak in this way? It is blasphemy. No one can forgive sins but God alone." At once, Jesus perceived in his spirit that they were discussing these questions among themselves. And Jesus said to them, "Why do you raise such questions in your hearts? Which is easier, to say to the paralytic, 'Your sins are forgiven,' or to say, 'Stand up and take up your mat and walk'? But so that you may know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins," he said to the paralytic, "I say to you, stand up, take up your mat, and go to your home." And the paralytic stood up and immediately took the mat and went out before all of the people, so that all were amazed and glorified God, saying, "We have never seen anything like this before." That is a great story. It's a wonderful story, and the first reason that I think it's wonderful is kind of off the subject. But if you know me, you know I get off the subject from time to time. That's just, what you get when you get me. And what's really cool is how these friends of the paralytic, men or women or both, brought the paralytic to Jesus, and they saw they couldn't get in the door. So what did they do? Well, they climbed up on the roof. And the roof was probably made of a mixture of straw and clay, and they set to work digging through the roof. And when they finally got through the roof, they let their friend down by ropes to where Jesus was, and Jesus forgave his sins. Now, don't you wish you had friends like that? People who would go to that kind of extreme to help you, who would dig a hole through the roof. I hope they fixed that hole before they left. But anyway, that's really cool, I think. Just the manner in which the paralytic came before Jesus. And there are 2 other things I want us to think about as we think about this story. First of all, Jesus forgives the sins of the paralytic. And this is the first instance in Mark's gospel, at least, where we see Jesus forgiving sins. So it's memorable for that. But there's also the fact that after he forgave the man's sins, Jesus healed the paralytic. He said, "Take up your mat and go home. You are healed." And to the amazement and joy of all the people who were there, the paralytic did just that. This was probably a man who had been paralyzed for a very long time. Everybody in town knew him. They knew that he couldn't walk. And all of a sudden, he was able to walk because of the gift that Jesus had bestowed upon him. Now, during Lent, as we think about forgiveness, I want us to take note of something. When Jesus forgave this man's sins, he didn't stop there. He didn't just say, "Okay, your sins are forgiven. Now, pull him back up and y'all go home." Jesus actually healed the paralytic. He physically healed the man so that the man could get up and take up his mat and go home. When we forgive people in our lives, we've got to do more than just say, all right, I forgive you, and then leave. We have to follow the example of Jesus. And after we forgive someone who has wronged us, we have to take action to encourage these people in their new lives after we've forgiven them. That may mean speaking a word of encouragement to them, going out of your way to run into them and assist them in some way. Take them a meal, work on your relationship with this person. Jesus went on far beyond the forgiveness to the actual healing. We have to enable that kind of healing to take place in people we forgive as well. So during this season of Lent, I hope you will find someone who needs to be forgiven by you, and that you will reach out into their life and not only forgive them, but also enable them in their new life. Thanks. I will see you all soon.